All right, today we're cracking open the mind of one of comics' most terrifying villains, Kid Miracle Man. We're going to do a psychological autopsy on a character who really serves as this chilling warning about power, trauma, and the monsters that can be forged right inside the human soul. This quote right here, from the source material that completely redefined him, it just perfectly captures his tragedy. See, he's not just some bad guy. He's like a modern-day Icarus, who was handed the power of a god, flew way too close to the sun of his own ego, and the results? Well, it was a catastrophe on an unimaginable scale. So how does a hero become a monster? That's the million-dollar question we're going to explore today, isn't it? His story isn't some simple tale of good versus evil. No, it's this dark, unflinching look at the gradual decay of a soul, a fall from grace that kind of forces us to ask, what truly separates a hero from the monster they could become? To really get the monster, you have to first understand the civil war that was just raging inside of him. See, he isn't one person but two, a timid, abused little boy and a vengeful, all-powerful god, both locked in this profoundly toxic relationship inside a single mind. And this is where it gets really wild, the sheer brutal contrast between the two. On one side, you got Johnny Bates, a kid who is so broken he can barely even exist. And on the other, you have Kid Miracle Man, a being so powerful he could level a city with a single thought. The helpless child is the victim, the all-powerful godling is the abuser. And that conflict, that internal war, that is the very engine driving his entire derangement. And just look at this arsenal. These aren't the powers of a hero. They're the tools of a god. But it's all in the hands of a mind that's just morally bankrupt. His telepathy, especially, that wasn't for communication. No way. It was a weapon he used to violate minds, to confirm his own contempt for humanity. It made his cruelty so much more intimate and, frankly, terrifying. Okay, so now that we get the two sides of his personality, the abused kid and the all-powerful god, let's dig into how one of them came to so viciously dominate the other. This wasn't some overnight transformation. It was a long, slow rot. So the crucial point here is that his fall wasn't a choice he made in one single moment. It wasn't a sudden snap. It was a slow burn, an agonizing process of psychological decay. It was all set in motion by one shattering event and then just left to fester in absolute solitude for 20 years. And you can just see the whole tragic journey right here. He starts out as this bright-eyed symbol of hope, the picture of heroic potential. Then, bam, the trauma of the blast shatters that innocence into a million pieces. And, in the lonely darkness that followed, a monster was born, forged in 2 decades of total isolation. The optimistic hero part of him died, and what crawled out of that crucible was a sociopath in a business suit. So, what were the specific psychological triggers that turned a traumatized hero into an architect of pure horror? It wasn't just one thing. Let's look at the chain reaction, the domino effect of pathologies that led to this meltdown. We've all felt the sting of trauma, but imagine that feeling amplified by godlike power. And you can see how each step just feeds right into the next one. The trauma of the weak child creates this intense self-loathing. That self-loathing gets projected outward as contempt for all of humanity. That contempt, mixed with absolute power, leads to a sadistic boredom where violence is literally the only thrill left. All of this just metastasizes for 2 decades until the hero's return finally lights the fuse. It's a complete, cascading meltdown of the soul. So, what's the ultimate lesson of his story? This psychological collapse leads directly to his most important role. He's not just a villain, he's a profound philosophical warning, a huge sign about the dangers of having power without any wisdom. This idea is the key to his entire tragedy. It's like giving a toddler a loaded gun. The power is there, but the maturity to handle it just isn't. He had all the external power he needed to become a true Superman, a transcendent being, but he failed because real growth, real evolution, that happens on the inside. And he just never got past his own baggage. He could have been a savior, a true force for good, but just look at how simple, how human his failures were. He never moved past his trauma. His ego, this pathetic overcompensation for his inner weakness, was his undoing. And most tellingly, what did he do with godhood? He became a cruel CEO. I mean, come on. It's such a catastrophic failure of imagination, proving he was always just a petty tyrant, a god in a business suit. This quote just perfectly captures the tragic irony of his whole existence.
He had the power of a titan, yet he remained just as small as a man. He could reshape the world, but psychologically he never grew up. He was still just that broken, petty child he hated so much.
Okay, so we've got the psychology down. Now let's zoom out a bit, because his story actually plugs into a much larger and much older literary tradition. His fall from grace is a really modern take on one of our most timeless myths.
He basically made a deal with the devil, but the devil wasn't some horned beast with a contract. It was his own ambition, his own trauma. What we're looking at here is a modern Faustian bargain, not a formal pact signed in blood, but an unspoken consequence of getting absolute power without the wisdom to manage it. He took out a loan for omnipotence, and the collateral was everything that made him human. And for closure, yeah, that was guaranteed.
Now, this chart is just fascinating because it traces how our idea of evil has evolved in our stories. So what's the takeaway from all of this? It suggests that evil transforms from some external monster we have to fear to an internal mirror that reflects our own dark desires. And with this character, we see the final stage. The devil is simply an empowered human. The greatest monsters aren't out there, they're in here.
So really, the main point here is that his tragedy, with all its cosmic horror, is ultimately an internal story. The real battle wasn't happening in the sky over some city. No, it was all happening inside the messed up internal landscape of one guy's soul. It's a timeless exploration of ambition, trauma, and ego.
And that leaves us with one last pretty chilling question that his story makes us ask. So I'll just leave you with this to chew on. If the greatest devil really is the one we forge inside ourselves, what truly separates the hero in you from the monster?